Good morning, friends, and welcome to New Garden Friends Meeting. Friends, every first day through the season of Advent, we are going to be lighting our Advent wreath. I have the meetings Advent wreath here with me this morning, and many of you may have an Advent wreath at home or the little Advent wreath kits that we sent out to all of you, or you might just want to light a candle at home this morning to celebrate with all of us. We are on the second Sunday in Advent, so we will be lighting another of the purple candles. There's 3 purple candles and 1 pink candle in our Advent wreath. And so this Sunday, we will be lighting both the hope candle that we lit last Sunday and also the faith candle, which is what we are lighting this Sunday. The faith candle in the Advent wreath reminds us to not only of our faithfulness to the living presence when we love one another and when we practice justice in our world, that we are being faithful to God in those actions, but it also reminds us of God's faithfulness to us, that God's love, that living presence is with us at all times and in all seasons. So friends, go ahead if you have an Advent wreath at home. Together, let's light our hope candle from last first day. Going to light our hope candle from last first day. And this first day, we are lighting together our faith candle. You can keep your candles lit throughout meeting for worship this first day, or you can blow them out whenever it seems appropriate to do so. Friends, our reading for this morning is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verses 26 through 38. This morning, I'm reading from the NIV, the New International Version, but I have gone through and I have ungendered God within the text. So if it sounds a little different, that's why. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. God is with you." Mary was greatly troubled by the angel's words and wondered what kind of a greeting this could be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will have no end." "How will this be?" Mary asked, "since I am a virgin?" And the angel answered her, "The Holy Spirit will come to you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. And so the Holy One who will be born will be called the Son of God. And even Elizabeth, your relative, she is going to give birth to a child in her old age. She who is said to be unable to conceive is now in the 6th month of her pregnancy. For no word from God will ever go unfulfilled." "I am God's servant," Mary answered. "May your word to me be fulfilled." And then the angel left her. I preach every Advent season on Mary. Mary is, after all, the hero of the Christmas story. I also have a deep spiritual connection to her. But of course, this year is different in so many ways. All of the challenges of 2020 seem somehow harder and closer during this Advent season. I think many of us are feeling particularly alone right now, particularly anxious, particularly sad over the ways that this Christmas season is so very different. So many of our precious Christmas traditions here at New Garden cannot happen this year. And I know that for many of you, the same is also true for your family Christmas traditions. It is into this moment of corporate anxiety and grief that Mary enters as a symbol of not only hope, but also a symbol of courage. The Magnificat, Mary's song about the nature of God and God's work, is usually where I focus my attention when I bring a message about Mary. The Magnificat reminds us that God is concerned with feeding the hungry and tending the brokenhearted, with lifting up the oppressed and bringing down systems of oppression. The way that Mary preaches this truth about the nature of God has always been deeply powerful to me. But this year, it was a different part of Mary's story, a part that I usually don't focus on, that spoke to me most deeply. The passage that I shared with all of you earlier, we encounter Mary for the first time. She's a young woman, a person without any social power, from a small town in a small country in a corner of the Roman Empire. Only a few characters in the Christmas story have any kind of wealth or influence. But Mary has even less than most everyone else in the story because she is an unmarried young woman. And God, personified in this passage by the angel Gabriel, comes to Mary. This is a truly revolutionary moment. God enters into a profound and mysterious relationship with a powerless person. We hear how extraordinary this is, how rule-breaking, how impossible this is, and how Mary responds to this connection, to this moment where the angel Gabriel comes to her. The angel went to Mary and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. God is with you." And Mary was greatly troubled at the angel's words and wondered what kind of a greeting this might be. We can imagine Mary's fear and her confusion. Typically, absolutely no one in Mary's time or in our time would say that a poor, unmarried young woman was highly favored. Mary isn't what the world thinks of when the world thinks of a person who has a special relationship with God. Holy men with beards, that's what people usually think of, not young women living in poverty. As a younger woman myself, although I'm probably at least 20 years older than Mary was when this story took place, as a younger woman myself, I know what it is like to be seen by society as an unlikely candidate for religious leadership. But God is doing so much more in this moment than simply calling Mary into ministry. Although God is also doing that, we hear Mary's powerful preaching in the Magnificat. But God is doing so much more in this moment. God is asking Mary if she will partner with them in creating a moment of transformative solidarity. God's love for humanity is so wide and so great that God desires to be enfleshed with us, to join us in our humanity and to experience human joys and human evil. God with us, God as one of us. This is incredible and powerful stuff. And that is what God is asking Mary to help God with. God is inviting Mary into a holy partnership to do something profoundly unexpected, something that is so disruptive that thousands of years later, we are still filled with wonder and awe. I think a lot about this decision that God made to ask Mary to be the God bearer. God could have just appeared as a fully grown person to start strolling around with humans. But instead, God chose to ask Mary if she wanted to do something extraordinary, if she wanted to literally bear and give birth to God, if she wanted to be God's mother. And in doing so, God is saying that there is something miraculous, something sacred about the human experience of birth and life, of growing and changing, of parenting, and being within the scope of human relationships, human family, and human community. God was also saying that even those completely without power, the poor young women of the world, that those people have the capacity to connect with the divine in ways that are incredible and profound. Early on in my ministry, I was speaking with another young clergywoman, and she said, we shouldn't try to hold ourselves to the standard of our male predecessors, but instead we should embrace the fact that we preach like women. We all preach from our own experience, and it is those experiences that make our preaching powerful. I have been pregnant and I have given birth, and those experiences have taught me that carrying a baby, having a baby grow within you, that is a connection that almost defies articulation. When you carry a baby within you, you're not just an incubator. You're not just a container. And frankly, that is the way that the church has always imaged Mary. The church has treated her like some kind of holy and pure vessel, that her only purpose was to be a container to bring Christ into the world. But as a person who has carried children within me, I can tell you that her role was so much more than that. She was the divine, and the divine was her. She was one and also separate, with that baby that she carried within her, that baby that was God. She was the light bearer. She was holy in that experience in a way that defies articulation. The divine was inseparable from who she was. In some ways, we Quakers have a theological insight into this. In some ways, this isn't so much of a leap for us because we affirm that we all carry within us that light within, that we are all light bearers, that God is enfleshed and enmeshed with us, not just in the person of Christ, but also in that living presence that is within and with all humanity. But there's even more. Mary teaches us about what it looks like to be courageous in following God. Even in moments that may be fraught with uncertainty, even moments that may be painful or difficult, Mary says yes to God. And in doing so, she is courageous and hopeful and strong. She teaches us about the best of what humanity can be. In growing and loving, giving birth to Jesus, she demonstrates the human capacity for love and joy, even in unusual and difficult moments. And being willing to do something that opened her up to community ridicule, she reminds us of the human capacity for courage and integrity. In being willing to do something that was wholly mysterious and strange, she reminds us of the human capacity for imagination and wonder. And this year, that model feels particularly powerful to me. This year, when we are all trying to adapt, when our world seems painful and strange in so many ways, when we feel so alone and so without family and connections, in this year when the world feels filled with sickness and with fear, this year, Mary's example shines bright for me, pointing us towards the best that humanity can be, reminding us and reminding us again that we all are light bearers. She reminds us again that the divine is with us in a way that is powerful and real and true, that God's love for us is so great that God is interwoven with humanity. She reminds us again that hope is birthed into the world, even in the coldest, darkest nights. She reminds us that our leaders may be unlikely, that leadership may come from unexpected places. She reminds us again that God shows up for the poor, for the ignored and the overlooked in our society. She reminds us again of the story that changed the world and that continues to change us and change us again, a story of a backwater little town in a small country in a corner of the Roman Empire, where a young woman fearlessly said yes. She reminds us again that we have something to celebrate. Even when things are so difficult and so painful and so hard, we can celebrate that light is being carried and birthed into our world once again. Friends, Christmas Day is coming. And so let us once again tell the story of a young girl who was brave and true and strong and filled with hope. And may we once again follow her example and be light bearers in our world.